The sky was darkened by the massive shadow of the Imperial fleet. One by one, colossal starships descended from the heavens, their engines a hum of unfamiliar technology, their forms sleek and elegant in ways that defied Earth's understanding. As the ships touched down across the world, a wave of dread rippled through the global population. These were not visitors, but conquerors, and Earth had no means to repel them. On the ground, nations scrambled to respond. Emergency councils convened. Leaders reached across borders. But no amount of diplomacy seemed to stem the inevitable tide of galactic supremacy. At the forefront of Earth's efforts was General Marcus Evers, a seasoned military strategist known for his cold calculations in the face of overwhelming odds. But this was different. He had seen battles of all kinds, against insurgents, hostile states, even alien factions. Yet nothing compared to the arrival of the Galactic Empire. The Empire's representative, a towering figure in polished black armor, stepped onto the cracked earth of New York City. He exuded an aura of absolute certainty. His gaze swept over the crowd below, disdain evident in the slight twitch of his lips. "Humans," he began, his voice amplified by a system that made it echo through every corner of the globe, "your civilization has been found wanting. We have come to offer you a simple choice. Submit to the Empire or face annihilation." The news spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a threat, it was a decree. Governments scrambled to discuss their next move, but every communication sent to the Empire went unanswered. No response, no negotiations. It was clear this was not a diplomatic mission. It was the first wave of an invasion, a demonstration of their overwhelming power. In a secure military base hidden beneath the Nevada desert, General Evers convened with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Maps and images of the Empire's ships, captured by satellites, covered the walls. They all stared at the same unspoken truth. Earth had no weapons that could stand against this force. The most advanced systems humanity had ever built, F-35 jets, nuclear warheads, the M1 Abrams tank, seemed like toys in the face of the Empire's advanced technology. "They laugh at us," Evers muttered, his fists clenched at his sides. "They think we're nothing more than an infestation." An aide stepped forward, nervously clutching a report. "General, we've intercepted a transmission from one of their ships. It's a mocking broadcast. They're ridiculing our weaponry." Evers took the report, but did not read it immediately. He had known it would come to this: arrogance, underestimating humanity, dismissing Earth's potential. The Empire's advanced walkers, their shimmering energy weapons and massive warships made Earth's finest creations look primitive. But Earth had fought back against invaders before. General Evers had no intention of letting his world fall without a fight. Meanwhile, the Galactic Empire's Supreme Commander, Zorith, stood aboard his flagship, watching Earth's military responses unfold on the holographic screens in front of him. He chuckled darkly, turning to his officers. "These humans are amusing. They send us their most advanced relic, a tank they call M1 Abrams, a crude construct of metal and fire. How quaint." One of his officers, a tall, silver-haired alien, spoke with a tone of disbelief. "Sir, their efforts are laughable. Their best technology is nothing compared to ours. Perhaps we should simply wipe them out now." Zorith raised a hand, silencing the officer. "Patience. Let them make their futile attempts. Soon, their puny forces will break beneath the weight of our power." With a cruel smile, Zorith issued the order for his ground forces to begin landing. Earth's resistance would be crushed in mere hours, and the humans would know their place in the galaxy. As the Empire's first wave of soldiers disembarked, armored, towering figures with weapons that glowed with unnatural energy, General Evers stood at the front of a military base in Montana. He looked down at the M1 Abrams tanks lined up before him, their powerful engines growling softly. Despite the odds, the Abrams stood ready, not just as machines of war, but as symbols of human determination. Colonel Sarah Hayes, a veteran tank commander, stood next to Evers, adjusting her gloves. She was young by military standards, but had quickly proven herself in battle. "General, we know these tanks inside and out. They're tough. They're adaptable. We might not have the firepower of those walkers, but we've got the will to fight." Evers looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "It's not just about firepower, Sarah. It's about strategy. We might not have their advanced tech, but we have something they don't understand: our resolve." The ground trembled as another Empire transport ship landed nearby. Soldiers began to move, and the first wave of battle began. Evers watched the skies. This was a moment. The future of Earth rested on their shoulders, and he knew they couldn't afford to back down. The first skirmishes were chaotic. Earth's forces were scattered, trying to form a coherent defense. The Empire's advanced walkers stomped across the landscape, sending soldiers fleeing in terror. But there were moments, brief, shining moments, where the M1 Abrams tanks found their mark. One by one, the massive war machines crushed human defenses, but the Abrams retaliated, its main gun blasting apart one of the smaller walkers. "They've hit one of our units," one of Zortha's officers exclaimed, a tone of disbelief in his voice. "Impossible. How can these creatures—" Zortha's eyes narrowed. "It seems they're more resourceful than I anticipated, but this will not last. Deploy the heavy artillery. Show them the full power of the Empire." As the first round of battle raged on, Evers knew one thing. Earth's weapons might have been mocked, but they weren't done yet. The Empire's advanced technology had underestimated the one thing they had failed to consider: the heart of humanity. And now, the Empire would learn that they had chosen the wrong species to scorn. With the M1 Abrams at the forefront, the fight for Earth was only beginning. The first hours of resistance were chaos. Earth's forces, disorganized and outgunned, scattered in the face of the Empire's overwhelming firepower. The alien walkers, with their towering frames and energy shields, strode across the battlefield with mechanical precision, mowing down human defenses. For the Galactic Empire, it was a spectacle, a demonstration of their dominance and the futility of resistance. Yet amidst the turmoil, there were moments that gave the invaders pause. General Marcus Evers stood in the command center, his face grim as reports poured in. Each skirmish followed a predictable pattern. The Empire would land troops and machines, annihilating any resistance with minimal losses. But then came the unexpected. An Abrams tank crew had managed to disable one of the Empire's scout walkers, exploiting its unarmored flank with a well-placed shell. "Primitive, my ass," muttered Colonel Sarah Hayes as she watched the footage. Her Abrams, call sign Ironheart, had been part of the operation. While the alien technology was light years ahead of anything Earth could muster, it wasn't invincible. Hayes had been one of the first to realize the Empire's arrogance would be their weakness. The Galactic Empire viewed war as a science, precision and power delivered with ruthless efficiency. Humans, on the other hand, fought with a chaotic blend of desperation, ingenuity, and sheer defiance. Evers had long understood this difference, and now he leaned on it heavily. "They're playing by their rules," he said, addressing the room. "Let's force them to play by ours." The strategy session was intense. Evers, Hayes, and a handful of military strategists pored over maps and satellite data. The Empire's troops deployed in predictable patterns, relying on overwhelming force to crush resistance. But their arrogance left them vulnerable. They didn't expect Earth to adapt so quickly, nor did they anticipate the sheer tenacity of its defenders. Hayes leaned over the table, pointing to a cluster of terrain features on the map. "They're deploying their walkers here, in open fields. Makes sense. They can maximize their firepower and avoid ambushes. But that also means they're ignoring choke points." Evers nodded, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. "We can use that. Force them into tighter spaces, limit their mobility, and when they're stuck, we hit them hard." The plan was set. Earth's forces would use the terrain to their advantage, luring the Empire's forces into traps where the Abrams tanks could strike with precision. It wasn't perfect, but it was all they had. Out on the battlefield, Hayes and her crew prepared Ironheart for action. The tank had seen countless battles, its scarred hull a testament to its resilience. Despite its age, the M1 Abrams remained a marvel of engineering. Powerful, reliable, and adaptable. For Hayes, it was more than a machine. It was a lifeline, a weapon that symbolized humanity's refusal to bow. Her gunner, Corporal Jensen, adjusted his sights, his fingers steady despite the tension in the air. "Think they'll laugh at us again when we put a hole in their fancy walkers?" he quipped. Hayes smirked, her tone sharp. "Let's make sure they don't get the chance." The first ambush was set near a narrow valley, its rocky walls providing natural cover. Empire forces advanced confidently, their walkers flanked by shimmering drones that scanned for threats. From their vantage point, Hayes watched through Ironheart's periscope as the enemy moved into the kill zone. "Hold," she whispered, her voice tight. The walker's energy shield shimmered faintly in the sunlight, a reminder of the challenge they faced. But the Abrams tanks had a secret weapon, kinetic energy penetrators. These rounds, designed to punch through modern armor, had a chance against the Empire's shields, especially if fired at close range. "Now," Hayes ordered. Ironheart's main gun roared, the shell streaking across the valley and slamming into the lead walker's shield. The impact sent a ripple through the energy field, destabilizing it for a fraction of a second. A second shot followed, this time piercing the walker's armor. The massive machine staggered before collapsing in a heap of sparks and smoke. Around them, other tanks and infantry joined the fight, targeting the remaining walkers. The Empire's troops scrambled to respond, but their coordination faltered in the confined space. For the first time, Earth's forces gained the upper hand. Back aboard the Empire's flagship, Supreme Commander Zorth watched the battle unfold on a holographic display. His expression, once smug, was now a mask of cold fury. "Explain," he demanded, his voice a dangerous growl. An officer hesitated before responding. "They're tanks, Commander. They're using kinetic projectiles to exploit the weaknesses in our shields." Zorth's eyes narrowed. Shields designed to withstand energy weapons. And yet these primitives... He cut himself off, his jaw tightening. "Send reinforcements. Deploy the heavy walkers. I want this resistance crushed." On the ground, Hayes and her crew celebrated their victory, but the moment was short-lived. A deep, mechanical rumble echoed across the battlefield, heralding the arrival of the Empire's reinforcements. The new walkers were larger, their shields glowing brighter, and their weapons more devastating. Evers, monitoring from the command center, clenched his fists. The Empire was adapting. They had underestimated humanity once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. Now it was a race. Could Earth's forces exploit their momentum before the Empire brought its full might to bear? Hayes didn't wait for orders. "Ironheart on me," she barked, rallying her crew. The Abrams might have been outdated by galactic standards, but it had one advantage the Empire's machines lacked: adaptability. The tank moved swiftly over rough terrain, its crew working in perfect synchronization. As the battle raged, a strange shift occurred. The Empire's soldiers, once so confident, began to show signs of hesitation. Their shields, so effective against energy weapons, faltered under the relentless assault of Earth's artillery. Their walkers, designed for open-field combat, struggled in the dense forests and narrow passes where Earth's forces led them. In the command center, Evers allowed himself a grim smile. They're learning the hard way. Arrogance doesn't win wars. But the battle was far from over. The Empire's forces regrouped, their commanders adjusting tactics to counter Earth's growing resistance. For every walker destroyed, another took its place. The battlefield became a deadly chessboard, each side adapting and countering in a relentless struggle. As night fell, Hayes and her crew found themselves facing a new challenge. A massive walker, its shields crackling with energy as it advanced. Ironheart fired round after round, each shot chipping away at the behemoth's defenses. The tension was palpable as they prepared for one final strike. "Load hfyscifistories," Hayes ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. The shell slid into place, the gunner taking careful aim. Fire! The shot hit its mark, piercing the walker's core. The explosion lit up the night, a brief moment of triumph amidst the carnage. But Hayes knew it was just one battle in a much larger war. As the dust settled, Evers received a message from Hayes. "They bleed, General. Now, we just have to make sure they know it." The tide was shifting, but the outcome remained uncertain. For every victory, the Empire grew more determined and the cost of resistance mounted. Yet humanity refused to falter. They had tasted the Empire's blood, and now they fought not just for survival, but for vindication. The war for Earth was far from over. The battlefield stretched endlessly, a scarred wasteland of smoke and shattered Earth. Human forces, battered but unyielding, dug in along ridgelines and dense forests. The Galactic Empire, despite its arrogance, had begun to acknowledge Earth's resilience. Still, the alien commanders pressed forward with mechanical precision, deploying increasingly lethal machines of war. Supreme Commander Zorth had promised swift annihilation, and the pride of the Empire demanded nothing less. Yet amidst the chaos, Earth's defenders refused to break. Colonel Sarah Hayes wiped sweat from her brow as the muffled roar of Ironheart's engine vibrated through her chest. The M1 Abrams tank was a miracle of human engineering, and Hayes had pushed it to its limits. The crew, united by an unspoken bond, knew the stakes of every engagement. Corporal Jensen, the gunner, leaned over his console, calculating ranges with practiced precision. "They've sent another one, bigger than the last," he muttered, his voice tinged with a mix of dread and determination. Hayes nodded. "Let them come. They're not invincible." Her tone carried the weight of exhaustion, but also the unyielding fire of defiance. The Empire's walkers, massive and seemingly impenetrable, had begun to show vulnerabilities under Earth's relentless assaults. In the distance, another behemoth emerged. The Empire's latest deployment, a towering machine bristling with advanced weaponry and a shield that shimmered like a wall of starlight. Its footsteps sent tremors through the ground, each one a reminder of the stakes. Around it, Empire soldiers advanced in tight formation, their energy weapons tearing through anything that dared oppose them. General Marcus Evers watched from the command center, his face a mask of grim focus. Every engagement was a calculated risk, every decision a gamble against an enemy that outclassed Earth in every measurable way. "The new Walker's shields are stronger," he said to the room. "But stronger doesn't mean perfect." An aide hesitated before stepping forward. "General, the M1 Abrams units are already in position. But if this Walker is as advanced as it seems..." Evers silenced him with a sharp glance. "Hayes and her crew know what they're doing. We've come this far because we don't stop when the odds are against us." He turned back to the display, his gaze locking onto the icon representing Ironheart. "If anyone can break that thing, it's them." On the ground, the battle raged. Artillery shells arced through the air, detonating against the Walker's shield in bursts of fire and shrapnel. Infantry units moved in, using hit-and-run tactics to harass the Empire's troops. Hayes, perched in the commander's seat of Ironheart, barked orders to her crew. "Jensen, aim for the shield generator. It's on the lower left, just under the armor plating." Jensen adjusted his sights, his hands steady despite the chaos. "Got it. Firing." The Abrams' main gun roared, the shell streaking toward its target. It struck the shield, causing a ripple of distortion, but the Walker continued its advance. "It's holding," said Sergeant Alvarez the loader, his voice tense. "What now?" Hayes scanned the battlefield, her mind racing. The Walker was designed for open combat, relying on its overwhelming firepower and advanced shielding. But it was also slow, its massive frame suited for tight maneuvering. A plan began to form, a desperate gamble that might turn the tide. "Drive us into the ravine," Hayes ordered. We'll use the terrain to get close. If we can hit that shield generator at point-blank range, we might stand a chance." Alvarez hesitated, but only for a moment. "You sure about this, Colonel?" Hayes met his gaze, her expression unyielding. "I'm not letting that thing tear through our lines." We ended here. Ironheart roared to life, its tracks churning through mud and debris as it descended into the narrow ravine. The walker, unable to maneuver into the confined space, hesitated at the edge, its weapons swiveling to track the tank. Hayes knew they had seconds before the alien behemoth unleashed its firepower. "Jensen, load hfyscifistories," she said, her voice sharp. "We get one shot at this." The walker's shield flared as smaller tanks and infantry continued to pepper with fire, a relentless distraction that bought Ironheart precious seconds. The Abrams raced forward, its engine straining as it climbed over jagged rocks and craters. Hayes gripped the controls tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. "Target locked," Jensen called out. "Shield generator in range." Hayes didn't hesitate. "Fire." The round slammed into the walker's shield at point-blank range, the impact generating a deafening crack. The shield flickered, then collapsed, leaving the machine's exposed underbelly vulnerable. Before the walker's crew could react, Jensen fired again, this time aiming directly for the generator. The explosion was immediate and catastrophic. The walker shuddered, its massive frame collapsing in a heap of flames and twisted metal. Cheers erupted across the battlefield as the Empire's soldiers faltered, their confidence shaken. For the first time, the Galactic Empire's forces began to retreat, their unshakable dominance called into question. From the command center, Evers allowed himself a rare smile. "They did it," he said softly, his voice filled with a mix of pride and relief. He turned to his staff, his expression hardening. "Signal all units. Press the advantage. The Empire's bleeding now. Let's make them feel it." Hayes and her crew climbed out of Ironheart, the tank's hull scorched and battered but still operational. Around them, human soldiers regrouped, their faces lit with newfound hope. Hayes looked toward the horizon, where the Empire's forces were retreating under the weight of Earth's relentless counterattack. Jensen, leaning against the tank, grinned. "Think they're still laughing at us?" Hayes smirked, exhaustion etched into her features. "Not anymore. But this isn't over. They'll be back." The sky above was still filled with the Empire's ships, their presence a reminder of the power that humanity faced. Yet for the first time since the invasion began, the balance had shifted. The M1 Abrams, once dismissed as a relic of a bygone era, had proven its worth against an enemy that thought itself invincible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Hayes and her crew prepared for the battle still to come. They had struck a blow against the Galactic Empire, but the war was far from over. For now, though, they had a moment to breathe, a moment to savor the fact that, against all odds, humanity had begun to fight back. The battlefield was eerily silent in the aftermath of the walker's destruction. The only sounds the crackling of flames and the distant rumble of retreating Empire forces. Colonel Sarah Hayes stood atop Ironheart, surveying the wreckage. For the first time in weeks, there was no immediate threat bearing down on her crew. The massive hulk of the fallen walker lay crumpled in the valley, a monument to the battle's turning point. But Hayes knew better than to let her guard down. Victories like this were fleeting. General Marcus Evers' voice crackled through the radio. "Hayes, status report." She glanced at her crew, each of them exhausted but alive. "Ironheart still running, sir. Enemy walker neutralized. Forces retreating west." There was a pause before Evers spoke again, his tone tinged with pride. "Outstanding work, Colonel. You've just given us our first real chance." Despite the praise, Hayes felt no relief. This victory, while critical, had come at a staggering cost. She had seen the broken bodies of soldiers scattered across the field, their sacrifices etched into her memory. The fight was far from over, and she knew the Empire wouldn't take this defeat lightly. In orbit, aboard the Empire's flagship, Supreme Commander Zorth paced the command deck, his expression thunderous. The holographic display showed the walker's last moments, the M1 Abrams breaching its shield and delivering the final blow. It was an insult Zorth could scarcely fathom, a technologically inferior species, defeating the pride of the Empire's ground forces. His officers stood at attention, avoiding his gaze. "Enough," Zorth growled. "Their resistance ends now. Prepare the orbital strike platforms." One of his senior officers hesitated, speaking cautiously. "Commander, with respect, the humans are resourceful. An orbital assault might push them to even greater desperation." Zortha's glare silenced him. "Desperation changes nothing. This world will burn. On Earth." General Evers gathered his remaining commanders in the war room. Maps and holograms flickered before them, displaying the Empire's fleet positioning. Intelligence reports indicated increased activity among the orbital strike platforms. Zortha's next move was clear. The Empire planned to bombard Earth into submission, leveling entire cities to break humanity's will. "We can't let them fire those weapons," Evers said, his voice sharp. "If they start raining destruction from above, it's over." Hayes, patched into the meeting via comms, spoke up. "Sir, the Abrams was designed to withstand nuclear fallout. It might not be space tech, but it's the best ground asset we have. Give me a team. We'll get close enough to disable their targeting relays." Evers hesitated. The plan was dangerous, bordering on suicidal. But time was running out, and Hayes had proven her ability to deliver results. Finally, he nodded. "You have the green light. Make it count." The mission began under the cover of night. Hayes, her crew, and a small contingent of infantry moved toward the Empire's main relay station, a massive structure nestled within a mountainous region. The journey was grueling, every mile bringing them closer to enemy patrols. Ironheart led the charge, its armored hull shielding the soldiers behind it. As they neared the relay, the scale of the structure became apparent. It loomed above them, its spires crackling with energy as it coordinated the Empire's orbital platforms. Guarding it were advanced walkers and platoons of alien soldiers, their ranks unbroken despite recent setbacks. Hayes surveyed the defenses, her mind racing. "We'll need to split their attention," she said, addressing her team. "Infantry, flank their position. Ironheart will draw their fire." The plan was set in motion. As infantry units moved into position, Ironheart charged forward, its main gun roaring to life. Shells exploded against the walkers' shields, creating chaos among the defenders. The Empire's forces responded with concentrated fire, their energy weapons lighting up the night. Inside Ironheart, the crew worked with mechanical precision. Corporal Jensen called out targets, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Walker on the ridge. 2:00. Hayes adjusted the tank's positioning, giving Jensen a clear shot. The round hit its mark, disabling the walker's leg and sending it crashing to the ground. "Keep firing," Hayes ordered. "We're not done yet." The battle raged for hours, the humans fighting with a ferocity that left even the Empire's seasoned soldiers shaken. Finally, after a grueling assault, Hayes and her team breached the relay station's defenses. With Ironheart providing cover, the infantry stormed the structure, planting explosives at key points. Hayes watched from her vantage point, her heart pounding as the charges detonated. The relay station erupted in a massive explosion, its spires collapsing in a cascade of fire and debris. The Empire's orbital platforms, now blinded, ceased their bombardment preparations. In orbit, Zorth stared at the chaotic reports streaming in from his officers. The loss of the relay was catastrophic, rendering the orbital strike platforms useless. For the first time, he felt the sting of genuine defeat. "Withdraw the fleet," he ordered, his voice cold. "This world isn't worth the cost." As the Empire's ships began to retreat, the skies over Earth cleared. Cheers erupted across human strongholds as news of the victory spread. Against all odds, humanity had forced the invaders to withdraw, proving that even the mightiest empire could be humbled. Back on the ground, Hayes and her crew emerged from Ironheart, their uniforms streaked with soot and sweat. Soldiers surrounded them, their faces lit with gratitude and admiration. Hayes felt a surge of emotion as she looked at the Abrams, its battered hull a symbol of humanity's resilience. Ever's voice crackled through the radio, filled with rare warmth. "Colonel Hayes, Ironheart, and everyone involved in this mission, you've saved Earth. I don't think history will forget this." Hayes smiled faintly, exhaustion overtaking her. "We didn't do it alone, sir. This was everyone's fight." The aftermath was bittersweet. Cities lay in ruins. Millions mourned their losses, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. But amidst the rubble, humanity found hope. The Galactic Empire had underestimated Earth, and now the galaxy knew what humanity was capable of. As Hayes stood atop a hill overlooking the battlefield, she felt a sense of pride and resolve. The fight wasn't over. There would always be threats to humanity's existence. But for now, Earth stood united, ready to face whatever came next.